Hey nerdy knitter, it's the end of another month and that means it's time for a monthly knitting roundup where we look at all of the knitting projects I've been working on over the past month. So grab a drink and your knitting and let's settle in for a good chat. We've got lots of knitting to talk about in this episode. I've got quite a few finished projects, some new things on the go, but of course, before we get to that, we have a few announcements, and of course, we have to talk about our book for the month. But announcements first. First of all, this past month was sort of a theme. We talked all things variegated yarn. I'm going to put a playlist down below that has all those videos. Now, it ended up being quite a big topic. We had a lot to talk about. There were a lot of comments, and I even got emails from people and tons of feedback. So I think the series was something that was needed. Like, people really wanted to talk about how to use variegated yarn. And there was not controversy, but some pushback because honestly, I don't really love variegated yarn sometimes. Like if you knit it in plain stockinette, and sometimes it has some striping and pooling and flashing, and I don't think that looks so great sometimes. Depending on the project, I don't mind it in socks or small things. I don't really love it in a sweater. So the series was really focused on helping people like me still use those yarns, but in other ways or with other stitch patterns. So you could still get the fun colors, but then you wouldn't get that pooling and flashing and when you don't want it. But there were actually quite a few people who love all that. So the last video in the series, it was more about the comments others had left because a lot of people wanted to push back and say they actually love the way those yarns knit up, and that's totally valid. So if you haven't watched the series, I'll put the link for it down below. It's 4 different videos, ranging in length from, 15 minutes to about maybe half an hour. I think that was the longest one. I'm not quite sure now. But all about the topic of variegated yarn. And also a new pattern release. Actually, it's been out before, but the rights reverted back to me a while ago. I'm just getting around to releasing some now. So the Bis-Bias Infinity scarf using some yarn from Biscot Yarns, their Biz sock yarn. That's where the name of the scarf came from. So it uses 2 skeins of sock yarn, one in sort of a variegated colorway and one in a solid, and you just alternate between the two, knitting this infinity scarf on the bias. It's got a little texture in there, I-cord edging, pretty simple project. So if you'd like to check that out, you'll find a link for that down below as well. Our book for the month is Patty Lyon's Knitting Bag of Tricks. So this isn't my copy. My library happened to have it, so I grabbed a copy so I could flip through it. Illustrations are done by Franklin Habit, and they are fabulous. There's some really great illustrations in here. Now, if you ever watched interviews or videos with Patty Lyons or taken any of her classes, you know what her personality is like. She's got a big personality, and that is so apparent in this book. Like, her personality really shines through in the book, and it's definitely worth picking up and reading if you can get your hands on a copy. It's not like a comprehensive knitting guide, but she is known to have like little tips and tricks that she shares in her classes that help you improve some aspect of your knitting, whether that's a cast on or some finishing techniques or what have you. So that's what you're going to find in this book. So we're going to go to the overhead and you can get a close-up look at what you're going to find in here. So Patty Lyon's Knitting Bag of Tricks, over 70 sanity-saving hacks for better knitting. And the illustrations are by Franklin Habit. So if you check out the table of contents, you'll see basically what you'll find in this little book. So the first chapter is all about like stitch anatomy and how the stitch sits on your needles, how to make stitches. I know it's very basic, but it's fundamental that every knitter really should know. And then a section on gauge, and then info about tips and advice about knitting patterns, cast-ons, increases and decreases, other pesky things that need some solutions, like joining a new ball of yarn or short rows, or things to make ribbing easier. Then there's a section on finishing. So there's lots of really good tips and information in here, and she has organized it very well. So when you flip through, you'll see there's lots of great illustrations. And the format is just really nice. It's a good size to just flip through and look at, and you can see here some information on stitch anatomy and how stitches work together. And then lots of tips throughout the book. And fixes. So this section's on the long tail cast on. So there are 4 simple fixes to make it improve it or make it better, as she says in here. The SSK, so variations on how to fix that and neaten it up. Lots of just good, useful little tips. So this book is definitely worth checking out. If you can find it at your library, it's worth grabbing a copy and reading through it because the tips are really useful. And I'm not sure, like, it's a book that if I had it on my shelf, I would remember to pull out and like use as a reference if I were writing an article or researching a topic. But the tips and information is very useful. It's just, I feel like you could read it and absorb the information, maybe go back to it a time or two when there's something you remember was in the book and, the long-tail cast-on is in there. She had a tip about that. I want to go reference that again. Then it's useful for that. So really good information though, definitely worth reading through at least once and maybe having on your shelf so you can refer back to it in the future when you want to. After I finished recording last month's episode, I put all of my projects on my bed and I recorded just a quick little video showing where I was in the project and what I wanted to accomplish over the next month. So we're going to take a quick look at that right now and then we'll see if I accomplished everything that I set out to accomplish for the month. So here is my pile of projects for the month. I might cast on something new as a reward for finishing this stuff, but here's where we're at the moment. So I've got this scarf. So I'm making really good progress with this. I'll have to lay it all out here at some point to show you, but there's the whole thing. I've just finished, I think I have one round or one row left on my chart, so I can move this up. So I'm ready to start a new chart. So you can see how much progress I make between now and the end of the month. So it's coming along really well. And then there is this shawl. I'm finally in the home stretch on this. I'm on the last part, which is the border on both sides, which is just a twisted rib. So nothing really special going on here. I finished the cables. I finished this stitch pattern section here. So as a reward, I cast on a new project, but that's a hat project I'll show you in a second. But this one is coming along well and I'm looking forward to getting it done because I already have an idea for my next shawl. I just dyed the yarn recently, so I want to go ahead and get started on that. And now my cardigan is coming along really well. I just finished the last part of the lace. This is the right edge right there. Let me see, here's the left side. I did the 3-needle bind off recently and I just finished the left side lace. So now I have to connect everything. So what happens now is the stitches here and the stitches here get another 3-needle bind off and then it gets joined to the back neck right there. So I'll pick up stitches along the edge here and join them with the 3-needle bind off to this back neck that's still on hold. Then all that's left is to pick up stitches and knit the sleeves. And I only have like a skein and a swatch left. One skein of yarn and one other swatch. I pulled out that one swatch already and I'm using that for the finishing of the lace. So I'm hoping that I can squeeze out 2 short sleeves with my one skein of yarn. But I think I'll be able to. The sleeve, because this is a drop shoulder style cardigan, it already comes down pretty far on the arms. So I should be okay to do that as well. And I'd love to have this done. We're taking a trip in early May and I'd love to get this done before that so I can have it to wear, but we will see if I can get that done in time. Then I've got this elephant. I need to go pick up some stuffing for this, but the pieces are all knit already. It's just knit in one piece like that, and I've got like the location for the ears and eyes marked out. The ears are all knit. Everything is just garter stitch. It was really simple and easy to do. So I just need to get some stuffing and do all of the finishing and sewing up for this. And my hat, which is going to be that Musselburgh hat where you knit with one color and then halfway I'm going to knit with a second color, which seems to be tangled up here already. So I'm making good progress on my first color. Already this is using fingering weight yarn, a sock yarn from Hypnotic Yarns, and more cute stitch stoppers. These are from Hypnotic Yarns as well. So I started this with 2 circulars. It was really simple. I just did 8 stitches cast on with backward loop. I just have to go in and close up that hole. Then when I had enough stitches, I just switched to just 1 circular needle, and I've got the other one here. So when I have to do the decreases and there's too few stitches, I can do that easily as well. And as far as crochet, I'm on my 7th motif. This is actually one of the earlier ones. Might have been number 1, I think. I had to make 4 of these. The 7th one is another flower, so I have to make 4 or 5, I can't remember now, of these flowers, and then they're going to get sewn between these bands. So this is one of the outside edges of the blanket. So the project for this month is to do that flower motif, get everything sewn up that I can do at this point, and then I just have the 8th motif and all the finishing left to do. So that's a look at what I've got right now. And if I finish anything, I have a few more things I'd like to cast on, but I'll talk about those after we get going with these projects. So the first thing off my needles is my Festival of Stitches shawl. This is a design by Lisa Haynes. Now it starts as a top-down triangle shawl. You can see it's a triangle shape right in the middle. And then you stop that very center stitch down at the bottom. That spine stitch becomes the spot where your tassel goes. And then you work out in each direction with lots of fun stitch patterns on either side. So it ends up being a bias rectangle instead. I added extra tassels on either side. So I've got 3 tassels instead of the 1, but really fun pattern. Here's a quick little clip of me making the tassels and attaching them. That was the last thing I had to do. Now this yarn uses, or this pattern uses, Knit Picks Stroll, the 75-25 Superwash Merino and Nylon in Vibrant Violet and Sapphire Heather. And then the white is the Capretta Superwash Bear. I had a bunch of it that I'm using for other projects, and I just grabbed a skein as my other like neutral color for in here. So this was a really fun knit. I liked all of the different stitch patterns. There was so much variety going on that you didn't have time to get bored with one. I did struggle a bit when I got to the cables because I don't really love cables on fingering weight yarn. They're just so tiny, but I did get a new cable needle. A lot of people had mentioned spiral cable needles, so I picked one up. Actually, I just bought a second one, so I have 2 in case I need to travel with one, because I liked it so much, and that was a big help. A lot of the time I like to just not use a cable needle if the cables are simple enough, but with sock yarn I kept dropping them, and especially in this navy blue it would be hard to see like the stitches that I had dropped, so I would try to use a cable needle, and that spiral needle was really nice for doing the cables on this section. But other than that, it was a great easy pattern. And it was originally done as a mystery knit along, and she's got tips in there on like however much yarn you have, how to estimate and how to, so you can use it all up. But I didn't bother with that. I just followed the directions for her pattern, or the sample that she had knit, so just the same stitch counts and all of that. But I just didn't feel like doing the work to make sure I was going to use up every little bit of yarn. I still have some leftovers, but those will go in, like I've got like a bin of sock yarn leftovers, so if I ever want to knit scrappy socks, or then I can just put it in a scrappy sock pattern, or I have like a bag of I have 2 different bags actually with scrap yarn for like scrap blankets, and one of them is for fingering and sock weight yarn, so it can end up in there as well. So I didn't mind that I didn't use every little bit of yarn, but really pleased. The pattern was well written, and I think it's the first of her patterns I've done, and she's got lots of lovely shawls. Especially, she's got other things as well, but tons of shawls, so I'll probably end up putting some of her other shawls on my to knit list at some point, but I'm really pleased with this one. I finished my Auchnaha cardigan by Kate Davies. I'm not going to put it on right now because it is pretty warm. It's a DK weight yarn, and it feels pretty hefty, so it's going to be perfect. It's more, it's shorter sleeves, and it's just, I think it's more like a transition weather sweater or cardigan for that weather in between, but it's getting warm here now, so I'm not going to put it on right now. It's knit in Knit Picks Gloss DK, which is a blend of superwash merino and silk, so it does have a really nice like shine to it. I don't know if that's going to show up on the camera, but it does have, I love the way silk adds like just the shiny, just a touch of shininess, and also like it gives a really nice drape. So really pleased with how this came out, and I thought I was going to end up playing yarn chicken, but I still have a little bit of yarn left, so I was concerned I might have to get another skein for the sleeves, but I wanted them a bit on the shorter side anyway, so I think it worked out just fine, and really pleased with this one. I like the way it fits. It's really nice it'll be nice over dresses or over, I don't know, whatever I want to wear it with. Like, it's just a nice transition weather cardigan, really interesting knit, and I really loved the shaping of it. Just it's very drop shoulder, but then it's further down on your your arm, so the sleeves are really quick to knit because there's not much of it after, like the way that it drops off your shoulders, and the way the stitch pattern runs up the front and then it's connected in the back. Just really interesting construction. And I liked it so much that I'm working on a design that uses sort of the same. I was doing some research, found some other patterns that have sort of that same method of construction where you like have some kind of a stitch pattern in the front or whatever, but you sort of carry it up through the back neck and connect it in the back. So it almost makes like a shawl collar, not quite as big, but just the way like you're not just stopping right here and connecting your shoulders, you're carrying that stitch pattern up and around the back. And it, depending on how wide that is, it can create like a collar that is almost like a shawl collar. So I really liked that idea. So one of the things I'm working on uses the same construction pretty much to create, like, this is going to be a sleeveless, like tunic length cardigan that I'm working on, but I'll show you that in a bit. Now I finished my baby elephant. This is the first stuffed thing I've ever made. I think it came out pretty good. I mean, if you look close, you can see, I'm not sure I stuffed it very well. So I wanted one that would sit. So it's just gonna sit, I don't know, on the shelf. My husband's cousin had her baby already, so we've got to get this sent off to her. But it is finally finished, and cute little tail too. So the pattern, I'll just have it linked down below, just a baby elephant by Claire Slade. Now the yarn is, I talked about it in the last episode, or the one before, I think the last one. It's just some unknown acrylic, but it's the yarn from the last project my husband's grandmother was working on, and I talked about before, her last project was a pair of mittens, and I've got them in a shadow box on the shelf. You can't see them in the video, they're on the shelf right beside me, but there's still plenty of yarn left over, and I thought it would be nice to like save it and use it for a few different things. And one of my mother-in-law, it was her mom that passed away, and this project had just been sitting in a bag for a while, so I put it in a shadow box and put it on the shelf, and I still have a lot of yarn left, but it's really well, it's an acrylic one, but it's not, I was going to make mittens or something with it, but it just doesn't feel very nice. But it's fine for like some sort of a stuffed animal or a toy that might just sit on a shelf as sort of like a memory of, for the baby, it would be his great grandmother. So my mother-in-law, she has a bunch of brothers and one sister, and it's her sister's daughter who just had a baby. So I figured, you know, I'm going to take some of that yarn and make a little stuffy that she can just put on the shelf and know that, you know, it's the same yarn that was her grandmother had used in her last knitting project. She died a few years ago, and it's just been sitting there. So I figured I would use it for something. I still have quite a bit left. It was one of those big skeins of acrylic yarn. So I'm just going to stick it in a bag with the notes. I remember what it is. And then if, I don't know, she's got another daughter, so maybe if she ever has a baby, then maybe knit something for her baby as well. But it's not anything you would want like mittens or something. The yarn is just not nice to the touch. I started a pair of mittens and I'm like, oh, this just doesn't feel good. They're not going to be nice to wear. But for something like a memory, like, you know, it's, I mean, the baby could obviously play with it. It's just yarn and not buttons or anything, just some black yarn for the eyes. But I think it's more of something that can just sit on a shelf. So the original pattern, I don't remember what the yarn weight called for, but I figured it would end up bigger than the one that was in the pattern, and it did, of course. But I think not so bad for my first little stuffed animal. He's kind of wonky through the back right there, but it's all garter stitch, so it's just, you know, mattress stitch to sew it up, and I think he came out pretty cute. So I have another finished shawl. This one wasn't even on my list of things to do until we went. It was our wedding anniversary this month, and we had just a quick trip to Niagara Falls. We're not super far from there, so we decided let's take the train and go to Niagara Falls. And I wanted an easy project that I could knit on the train or in the hotel room that wouldn't take too much brain power. And I had a couple of skeins from doing some videos about variegated yarn, that series. Knit Picks had provided some yarn so I could demonstrate like the different types of variegated yarn and other yarns as well. So two of the skeins in there, they're DK and Hawthorne in Confetti, Speckle, and Springwater Multi. I had a skein of each, and I thought they would make a great little project, so I just searched Ravelry for like 2 skein shawls, something simple. So just a lot of garter stitch, some eyelets, and some short rows, but very simple short rows. So you start over here on this edge, and then it's just sort of that bias triangle construction where you are increasing on one edge, decreasing on the other. And you're just doing that, just garter stitch, stop and do some eyelet stripes in there. And then you stop and you start doing some short rows, reversing the colors, and that gets you the other half of the shawl. So really very, very simple, very quick to knit up. Since it's a DK weight, it was really fast. Really fun construction. It's got me thinking. I've got a couple skeins of yarn from Alley Cat Yarns that I've been holding on to, trying to think of like I wanted to design something with them, so like a 2 skein shawl project. So this one, because it uses 2 skeins as well, has my brain thinking about some sort of short row construction with that yarn. So anyway, I'm trying to feel like it's a time to not clear out my stash and projects, but I've got like some yarn that's been sitting around waiting to be designed with, and I feel like it's time to get moving with some of those skeins. They've been sitting there for a while. So I'm trying to come up with some ideas for some of these different skeins, and those 2 skeins from Alley Cat Yarns have been sort of just sitting there. I've had a couple ideas, but I really like this idea of just doing a crescent. Sort of ends up being a crescent shaped shawl, not a triangle, but you start out as a triangle shawl, but then when you switch to those short rows, you get a crescent shape instead. So kind of like this idea. Might do a play on that sort of construction. We'll see. Something with short rows could be interesting. And I like the idea of just doing like a 2 skein project. But this one was fun to knit, easy to knit, great pattern, clear and simple to follow. And once you get the pattern in your mind, each part's so simple that you don't even need to look at the pattern. So it was perfect for like travel knitting and just knit up really fast. So the first thing on my needles is something that has been on my needles all year long, the Twilight Realm scarf. But I have finished my 50 rows for the month. So the chart, there are 5 charts, 100 rows each. And I have figured out if I can do half a chart a month, I can finish before Christmas and give this to my daughter. So I think at the rate I'm going, I should be done in October, which is plenty of time to get this done. But it's a commitment, double knitting like a whole scarf, and it's quite long. So this is, I'll put a little clip of it here, like laid out on the bed. But there is my little stitch marker from where I started last month, and I finished my 50 rows. So I am halfway through the 3rd chart. So I'm at the halfway point for the scarf, which is nice. So I'm making good progress. I will finish the 3rd chart in June. That will be my plan for next month, is to finish the next 50 rows, which is 100 rows of knitting. Doesn't sound like much, but it takes me a while to do a couple of rows. I've shown in the past I'm kind of slow with double knitting. But it is coming along. My edges are getting neater and neater all the time. That advice, somebody told me to like work them as Eastern mounted stitches, basically like wrap the yarn in the opposite direction for the first 3 stitches, 2 or 3, and to tighten things up basically, because it takes a little less yarn when you wrap the yarn in the opposite direction. And that has been a huge thing right there. I also got some new needle toppers for this. I am sort of addicted to these little things now. So these came from Fox and Pine. I'll have a link for them down below. I ordered some other things from them as well. But I have getting quite a collection of these needle stoppers now, and I really like them. They're just so cute and fun. Totally not necessary, but really fun. Now, this particular set I got because they're made for smaller needles. I think I'm using US 2. Or maybe 1.5, I can't remember now, for these needles. But a lot of the needle stoppers are for like US 3 and up, and they will stay on the ends. But if you like, I have another project, and the US 2s, they sort of slide right down so the tip is exposed. But Fox and Pine had some that are made, like the holes are smaller, so they're made for thinner needles or smaller needles. So I grabbed a couple of those. I might get another set if they get some cute other sort of designs or whatever, then I might pick up another one because I really like these. So the yarn for this is Knit Picks yarn. It is Comfy Fingering in Clarity and Planetarium. So Comfy Fingering is a blend of acrylic and cotton. So it's nice and soft, machine washable, very simple for my daughter to care for. She doesn't want anything that's going to require, you know, like pinning or hand washing or anything like that. She wants easy to care for stuff. So making good progress with this. So my Musselburgh hat, oh, you can see that issue with the stitch stoppers on this one. There's the US 2 tip and it keeps sliding right down. So issues with this, my yarn is all kinked up here. You can see because when I was knitting it, my gauge, well, the pattern doesn't matter what your gauge is. You like take your measurement from your knitting and use that to determine. And then I think she recommends like 5, might be 5 inches of negative ease for the hat. And I thought that was too much negative ease, so I decided to do more stitches. I knit so much that I'd finished with my first color and I'd started my second, and then I'm looking at it and thinking, this is really big. So I laid it flat and I measured, and it was almost like 23 inches, like the circumference. I'm like, that's huge. I don't know. Yeah. So I ended up increasing way too many stitches. So I pulled it back to like the very beginning where you are doing the increases. And then by then I'm like, I might as well just pull it all out and start over, because it was just like a small circumference of stitches. So I pulled it all out and I've started over. So I had finished all of one color because I'm doing a 2-color hat. So doing the whole length in one and then stopping and repeating, like going in the other direction with the second color. And I finished the first color, started the second color. So it's like 70 rounds past the increase round, I think I wrote down that I had. So I ripped it out and I restarted it, and now, yeah, it's much smaller now. And I should have just trusted the pattern. I thought that all of that negative ease would be too much. So then, and I think I relaxed too past, once I had switched from the 2 circulars to just knitting on 1 circular, my stitches relaxed even more, so my gauge grew. And yeah, so that was like, pull it out, start over, use the gauge I know I had at that point anyway to figure out what size I wanted. So yes, it's just, I mean, it's simple knitting. The casting on and the first few rounds are probably the most fiddly bit. I didn't do anything special. Just like use long tail cast on 8 stitches, and then divided it between 2 needles to do the 2 circulars method, and then just kept doing my increases until there were enough stitches to put on a 16-inch circular. But totally simple pattern. I've been reading in the evening, and this is sort of my knitting now that it's just like plain knitting. I can sort of read and sort of knit at the same time. Depends, as long as like the book isn't like some deep technical thing, but just reading a novel at night. So I would just sort of knit this and read a little, and it's so, I mean, it's just stockinette, so very simple to do. The yarn is Hypnotic Yarns Plush Sock, which is a blend of superwash merino and nylon. The colors are Wildflower and Amethyst Shadow. So you can see I'm working with the lighter one right now. So that is how that is knitting up. It's not much to look at, just a little bit of knitting right there. And when I get to like the length that I want for the hat with folding up the brim, I will stop and like reverse and go in the other direction, you know, knit the rest of the tube and then do the decreases with this one. I think this one is Amethyst Shadow. Really lovely purple, but there's a bit of that purple in this one as well, so I thought they paired up really well. New project in my little sack. I think I showed this last month. This is Burly Beavers. I just thought it was adorable. I live in Canada. I'm from Maine. You see little like buffalo plaid beavers and you just have to have it. So in here I have the Cherry Berry Shawl by Amba O'Brien. And yes, more little needle stoppers. These look like little Oreos. So this one, I dyed the yarn myself. It's not gonna, you can't really see much right now because it's on the needle, so it's just kind of a big lump of fabric. So the yarn is Capretta Bare Superwash, which is a blend of 80% merino, 10% cashmere, 10% nylon. And I bought a bunch of this with the idea of like dyeing it myself for some different shawls over the year. I've got like 3 different shawls that I wanted to knit, so I've got enough yarn, this Capretta Bare Superwash, which is really nice. It's got a bit of like extra softness from that little bit of cashmere in there. But it does like shed little bits while you're knitting. I've got like on my bag, there's little bits from the yarn. So the yarn, I think it was, the original has 6 skeins. It's meant to use with like a fade set. And I thought, well, let's do my own fade set. I don't know, you can see sort of like some of the transition in the colors there. So to do this, I decided I really like the original color, like the idea of doing something red or like that sort of pinkish red color. So I just used Jacquard dye, I think True Red, I'm not even sure, or Firehouse Red, I'm not sure of the color. Just got like a big pot that I use separately. I have a little like selection of things that I got secondhand. I bought 1 pot from the grocery store that I can use to dye, because it's just, you know, little bits for myself. So I took 3 skeins of this yarn, comes in a big 100-gram skeins. You can see some more of it right here behind me. Divided them each in half, and then I had my pot of dye on the stove. So I put the first skein in and sort of squish it down into the water. And I can't remember, I want to say I let it sit for like maybe a minute or 2 minutes, and then I put the next skein in and then waited another couple minutes and put the next one in, and then I just kept doing that. So like of course the one that's been sitting there the longest is going to absorb the most amount of dye, and then the one that's in there the shortest amount absorbs the least amount of dye. And the actual variation in color it's pretty obvious here because that first one is pretty light, but it's getting harder and harder to tell. I have to take them outside and look outside, like, because the last couple colors, they're so similar, like they're hard to tell apart, at least with my eyes. So hopefully I get them in the right order. The pattern itself is very, very, very simple past the cast on, which is right here. I can tell from the back side. You cast on right here in this center. You do a provisional cast on a second circular needle cord. You work like a few rows in one direction, and then you get the stitches from that provisional edge on, and you start working in the round. So it's worked sort of from the center out. And I worked it on 2 circulars at first. I transitioned way too quickly because it's got sort of this, you're increasing out here on the sides, but it's not a circle. It's going to be like a rectangle, but you're on this side here, on each side where you're doing those increases. When you first start, it's very narrow, and it was hard to shove your needles around and get around that corner. I should have left it on the 2 circulars for longer than I did, till it grew enough to get past that point. So it's almost like a raglan sweater where you've got your 8 increases. It's the same kind of thing. So you're increasing on one side, 4 increases here, and then the same on this side. So that gives you sort of this rectangular shape as it's growing out in, well, all directions, but it's sort of growing out that way as well. So just plain stockinette, doing it in the round though. So it's just plain knitting. And then you have these eyelet rows. That's what you finish with, sort of this eyelet ridge, and then you start your next color and then finish that with another eyelet ridge. I'm on my 4th color already, so this one's flying off my needles as well. I've got a couple ideas for some more interesting, I guess, projects, because between this and the Musselburgh hat, I'm just knitting. It's a lot of just plain knitting, and another project as well is just a lot of just knitting, and I need to add something that has a little more interest. So I'm looking at a few different projects, but anyway, I'll talk about them next month because I haven't cast on anything like that yet, but I'm realizing I need to, because I'm looking at everything and it's like, oh, it's just plain stockinette right now, which is starting to feel a little bit boring to me. But this one has actually been really nice because it's sort of like, okay, I've got so many rounds to do in the stockinette doing my increases, then I've got to do, okay, my eyelets, oh, now it's time for a new color. So it sort of keeps me motivated to work on it. And you know, it's hard to tell what it's going to look like now because it's all like bunched up on my cord, but it's a nice relaxing knit, not hard at all. You just have to remember to do your increases, but even those, there's markers there to keep you on track. But like all her patterns, very well written, easy to follow. I've done a few of her patterns and I've enjoyed every single one of them. So this is a new project and also a new acquisition. I got a new project bag. I seem to be on a roll with buying new things lately, so I'll just show it now since I've got a project in it. This is a good sized bag. I wanted one a little larger so I could do, hopefully maybe fit a sweater in here. I'm not sure. That's what I'm working on right now anyways, a cardigan, and all the yarn is in here. So this cute bag, drawstring top, and can you see the chickens on there? Knitting chickens, which I thought were just so cute. So just simple drawstring, really nice inside, pockets in there too, and my project is in there. So this is from the WoolNFrog on Etsy. Yes, the WoolNFrog on Etsy. Another, I think she's in Alberta. I can't remember, but Canadian anyway. So I'll put a link to her shop. Really nice bag. The inside is finished well, like just really nice detailed finishing. I can sew a little and I can do like basic stuff, but like all of that, so I can tell when something is nicely done because I can't do that, but I can tell it's nicely done. Like the seams are just nice, everything is finished. You don't see a lot of like unfinished edges or anything, well, or any. They're all like, it's all lined inside. It's got pockets on one side. It's a really good size. I think I've got like 6 skeins of yarn in here and the cardigan that I'm working on, and everything fits just well. So depending on the size of your sweater, you should be able to fit a sweater in here. But anyway, let's get to the project that's inside. So I'm working on a new cardigan design. This is going to be in the next issue of Cast-On magazine, in the fall winter issue, I believe. So, and yes, more little stitch stoppers. I really like these things. I used to use, or I still have, like their metal needle holders. They've got like a silicone tab thing on the end and you pop your needle tips through the silicone, holds them in place. I still have them, but I'm sort of converted to these little things. Like they hold your needles, your project stays on there, and they're so cute. And they don't make that clangy noise the metal does. The metal tube or needle stoppers. But anyway, I've been doing different videos on notions and talking about things that I thought would be like, you know, pointless, and these were things I thought were kind of useless, but now that I have some, I really like these stupid little things. They're just fun. So cardigan, it is knit all in one piece from the hem up to, well, the armhole, but you can see I've made pretty good progress so far. So it's mistake stitch rib along the bottom, and that is carried up along the front panels on both sides as well. So that's all marked off, like the back of the cardigan is here, and these are the 2 fronts. So there is the other front. So if I turn it around, this is what it'll look like when it's worn, I should say. So it'll have that mistake stitch rib is carried up along the 2 fronts. So right now, that's what I'm working on. Hopefully this will be done. Let me think, I've got to get it in the mail. Well, I might not have it for the next video. It should hopefully be finished and been sent off to TKGA. But that's the plan. So I'll have to just put a picture when it is finished. But it's a lot of knitting right now because it's going to be a tunic length. So sort of like, you know, just below your hips and butt kind of area. And so I'm working on that part. That was my plan this week, is to just knit all of that to the underarm, but not quite the underarm, because when it gets there, it's going to be a sleeveless tunic length cardigan, but a drop shoulder. But I wanted to sort of integrate the sleeves. You're not going to be picking up stitches and knitting the sleeves themselves. Because it's already like 10 or 18 inches is the plan for the ease, so it's going to be way off the shoulder anyway. So like a couple inches before you would separate and do the armholes, you're going to do like some increases along the sides to help push those sleeves out a little bit further and add sort of like a little dolman shape, like a little curve along the bottom. And that'll help the sleeves drop another 1.5 inches down onto the arm, or not really sleeves, I mean, but it's a drop shoulder. So like this part on the sweater I'm wearing, like there is a little sleeve attached here, but technically it would have been fine just to finish right there, not even put that sleeve on. So that is the goal with this cardigan, is to have it sort of drop off the shoulder. So I'm going to add some increases at the underarm to make it drop off a little more, and then integrate like the edging on the sleeve as well. I'm going to do a few stitches of that mistake rib, which I really like. I think mistake rib is a nice squishy rib. It just looks really nice. I'll probably block it so it's flat and open, but I'm gonna add like maybe 4 stitches of that along the sleeve as you're doing the armhole, and that will finish the edging on that as well. And then, so you finish the back to the neckline and the fronts to the necklines, doing some short row shaping, because I think short row shaping is nice in a drop shoulder, because then it won't stick out. You won't have a whole bunch of extra fabric here. You're sort of like smoothing it out along the shoulder, and keeping the sleeve opening, the armhole opening, fairly slim and close to the body, so it doesn't feel like you've got like wings flapping out on the top. And then that mistake stitch rib, like I did in the Auchnaha cardigan, like instead of finishing that right there, you're going to take that section, that panel, and knit them all the way until they're long enough to sit on the back neck, and then you'll join the 2 ends together. It sort of makes it like a shawl collar. So I really liked that detail on that cardigan, and I thought that would be nice to put in this one. So this is using Universal Yarns Wool Pop, which is a blend of 50% bamboo, 35% superwash wool, and then 15% polyamide. So it's got a really nice drape, which is nice, and a bit of a shine too. Bamboo is kind of like silk that way, where it adds a little bit of sheen. I'm not sure if that's going to show up on there. I think the color is called True Red, so nice. And that is actually showing up really well. Sometimes reds don't show up so great, but it's got a really nice drape. But because, which normally, like in a seamless garment, I would be concerned, because bamboo is very drapey and airy, but it doesn't have good elasticity like wool does. And there is some wool in here, but it's superwash, so same issue. It's kind of drapey as well. But the arms are going to have a 3-needle bind off to join them together. So I'm thinking that is enough structure that it's going to hold its shape just fine. But it'll have a nice drape, which is what I wanted. Something sort of you can throw on, but it's not like a full on, like heavy cardigan, because this is DK weight. And not the sleeves. So, I mean, the sleeves will end, here-ish or so, depending on the amount of ease that you're deciding for your size that you'd want to knit. And they're integrated right into the cardigan. So just something you can throw over, maybe wear with leggings, because it's going to be that tunic length. So really pleased with the yarn and how it's working up. I've got the pattern up to the shoulder shaping, the short row shaping, all written, sort of like I sort of write the pattern and knit from the pattern as I'm knitting, and then I can check how the stitch pattern is written, or make sure I've got all my stitches accounted for in there. So it's working out nicely though, and hopefully by the end of this week I'll have up to the armholes done, and then I can finish the rest in the next few weeks and get the pattern written up and send this off. So I'm making fabulous progress on my lily pond blanket. My plan had been to finish motif 7, but I've actually finished motif 7 and motif 8 and started putting everything together. So I have one piece left, like one frame to attach to this, and then I have to do the edging. But the center of the blanket is all sewn up now, and motif 8 is right in the middle. So that was the one that goes right in the middle of the square, and then also in the frame that I still have to put around that part of the blanket. So this has to be sewn around the part that's done. Not super big, it's nice. It's a nice little lap blanket. So that's all done. So my project for this month will be to get this sewing, get this frame added to this part of the blanket. I have to do single crochet all the way around the edge to fit that in there. And then there's an edging that's done all around the outside with some of the other colors, like some of the pinks and stuff, to do a little edging on the outside. So really good progress with that. I'm already looking at what I want to do next. I have another blanket in mind, but I don't really need another blanket. So I need to ask some friends if they want a blanket, and this is the one you're going to get if you want it. But anyway, I'm not sure quite yet what I might do there. I was actually thinking of maybe doing a Tunisian crochet project. I had a shawl picked out that I thought it would be nice to learn how to do Tunisian crochet. So we'll see. I haven't quite decided yet, but this is coming along really well. This uses Knit Picks Brava Sport. I tried to get colors that were very similar to the originals. I think I did fairly well. It might not be as bright, but I don't mind that it's a little more muted. It's going to sit right on here on the chair, sort of in my backdrop, and then if I'm sitting here. I don't usually sit here actually. My dog does. I take the cushion off because she's 15, 16 years old. She has a hard time jumping on things now. So I take the seat cushion off and she just, so then it's a really good height for her. She can jump and lay on like the uncushioned part. I put a blanket on there for her and that's where so she usually sits here when I'm not recording. But I sit here when I'm recording and sometimes when I want to watch TV or something like that. But it's usually where the dog sits, not me. So this will be on the back of the chair anyway. Not for the dog to sit on, but just pretty, add some color to the backdrop. So hopefully by the time I get to next month's episode, this blanket will be finished. I actually have a few acquisitions to show as well. I never have stuff I buy. I don't know why, but I just don't. And then for the last 2 months I have. So this I actually bought last month, but I forgot to show it to you. I used it when I was doing the tutorial for flexible DPNs, and it's really, really nice DPN holder. I wanted a new one to try and people had recommended these fabric ones, and I have to say I really like them. I have like one of those cardboard tubes. Never really loved the way it was so finicky trying to get your needles and keep your project on the needles, but this works super well. It's got like a lot of buttons on the bottom, 3 different buttons so you can adjust the size. Like if you have bigger needles, you don't have to use this button here, but if you have shorter ones, and it's got an extra little snap right there. And it's nice and heavy duty canvas, not canvas, but it's a heavier material. Really nice. So this is from Fox and Pine. It's I think they're out west, maybe Alberta. I can't remember now, but they're in Canada. Lots of great notions. I've got knitting patterns and stuff like that too, but notions and things. And then I bought that and I ended up on their mailing list, and then they released this thing. And I bought one right away. I was so excited about it. It is just a simple, sorry, making a lot of noise, notions case. And I've already got it packed full. Because I use a lot of stitch markers. And they're all in their own little tins and pouches and little plastic containers or baggies. And I have one Notions bag, which is now a new bag, which is another thing I'll show you in a second. But it was always a pain trying to, okay, which stitch markers do I need? Which little bag or tin are they in? So I put all of them in here. So all of my stitch markers are in like these different things on the side. Sorted by what they are. Like I've got like the Chowgu ring markers here, little ring markers there, the metal light bulb markers here, the plastic safety pin markers there. So it's very nice to have all of the markers I like to use in one place, and I use them all. I actually just bought more because I feel like I'm always running out of stitch markers. And then in the middle, I just put all of my other smaller Notions things that end up in my Notions bag, but then sort of like make a mess, like embroidery floss when I'm doing lifelines, some cable needles, those spiral ones, which I really love. So that was the one that I originally bought. Really liked it, so I ended up buying a second one because sometimes, you know, like if I'm traveling, I don't want to take all of my Notions with me, but I just want to take what I need for that project. So I got this little cat-shaped one. Anyway, so that's in here. And then in the bottom are like needle stoppers. And I got new needle stoppers too. Those little llamas I already showed you. And then I just couldn't resist these little Highland cows. They're just so cute. I couldn't resist them. Like I follow an account or two of just like the Scottish Highlands and Scottish things. And every time I see like a Scottish Highland cow, I have to like give it a little heart because they're so cute. So I couldn't resist those. So all of those little Notions and all my stitch markers I've got in here now instead of all their little individual pouches. So much easier to carry. But then this didn't fit in my Notions case anymore. And while we were in Niagara, we did some shopping. I like to buy usually when we go on like a trip, I buy a Christmas ornament that has something about that place we're visiting, because I just think it's nice when I'm putting up the Christmas tree to remember like our past trips together. And sometimes I'll buy something else too, but usually just an ornament. But I saw this bag and I really loved it. They had like this Indigenous art section in one of the shops, and this bag was there, and I just bought it. I'm like, that could probably work for like knitting socks or something. Like I could fit a skein of yarn in here and use it as a sock knitting bag. And it's got that print on both sides. Got a little loop here. But then after this was before I had bought this, So I was thinking this would just be another little knitting bag, but then I had bought this, and this didn't fit in my usual Notions case, which is just a small square pouch, but it did fit in here just fine. So this is my new Notions bag. So it holds that with everything in it. And then in the bottom is just like, you know, other random things that don't fit, like stitch holders, crochet hooks, my snips for cutting, tapestry needles are down there, and then everything else is in here. So my Notions case has gotten bigger, but everything is super well organized. It's either probably right in this case here, and if it's too big for this, it's just like tossed down in the bottom of the bag. One more thing to show. So for Mother's Day, my daughter bought me a mug that looks like a ball of yarn. It's in the dishwasher right now. I don't have it in here. She also, I keep showing her my new stitch stopper or needle stoppers, so she found some on Etsy for me. So this was a Mother's Day gift from her. These are the Pokemon from the original Pokemon game, which I've never played, but she got me into Let's Go Eevee, and then one of the, I think, Sword and Shield. I can't remember. Bulbasaur is my favorite though. So she found these on Etsy and she got them for me for Mother's Day. Like, I need more stitch stoppers, but they're so cute. So these have to go in my Notions case. I just left them like this so I could show them on here first. So these are from an Etsy shop called Creation Miss Couture. So I will put a link down there for her. I haven't looked on that shop to see what else there is, but if you like the nerdy things like Pokemon and you want that for your knitting needles, then you can check out her shop. One more thing to show before we wrap it up here. So that would be the Yarnable subscription, and it's not a spoiler because this is the box for May and you probably have yours already. Mine's been sitting here for a while, so I could show it to you before I knit with it. I've already got a plan for this yarn. Very excited about that. But it's a citrus themed month. Berry Citrus Bliss. Comes with a little card with a little scratch off thing and details about the stuff that's in there. I really like the way she packages everything here. Everything is in like one of these little zipper pouches, which are nice for Notions, or I think that's probably a great idea for like if you like to have a little Notions case with each of your projects, then after a while you'd have plenty for that. So in that there's always little things, notions and things with it, and this time it seems to be like a food thing. So there's a lemonade drink mix, and I just like the box. Like, it's just, you know, lemonade pitcher. Very, very cute. So nutrition information on the back, but just some lemonade, which it's been cold and rainy here, so this is gonna have to wait. But I figure when it's nice and when it's hot, I love something like a good lemonade to cool me off. So there's lemonade. And this raspberry lemonade mix, which you're supposed to, I think, is it powder? It looks like a powder. It feels, I'm not sure. Yeah, it looks like a very tightly sealed powder, but you mix it with cream cheese and whipped cream and raspberry lemonade, sort of a dip for like your fruit or crackers or something like that. So I'm going to be saving that because we usually have, you know, friends come over for a visit and we'll sit in the backyard on the patio. So this feels like maybe I'll save the lemonade too, and we'll have like some fruit, something small to snack on. So this will be perfect for that. So the last thing that came in the bundle besides the yarn is Sarah Hart's woven labels that say, "Thanks, I made it." So very, very cute little labels. I've never put labels in my knitting projects before, so maybe I should start doing that. I love the little extras that come because it's, you know, sometimes things that I just probably wouldn't buy for myself or things I hadn't heard of before, but it's really all about the yarn. So the yarn this month is called Berry Citrus Bliss. So this, I got the sock yarn. So this is plush sock, which is 8515 Superwash Merino. You can see the lovely colors there. It's very citrusy, all those yellows and oranges and peaches and the pop of pink in there too. Really, really nice. And I've already got a plan for this. I just downloaded an ebook from Woolly Wormhead with some of her different garter stitch short row hats that are knit sideways, because this is variegated yarn, and if you've watched that series, I talk about garter stitch is great for variegated yarn. Short rows are good for it because it changes the direction of the knitting. So garter stitch short row hat. So I'm going to knit, I think there were 4 or 5 patterns in that ebook, and there were 2 that I really liked. So I'm like, I might as well just get the ebook instead of the individual patterns because it had other information as well, like, using short row shaping for hats and stuff like that. So I think I'm going to knit the beret in that pattern, but I'll talk about that next month. But I was so pleased with this yarn. I just thought it was such fun, bright colors, and I wanted to knit something fun with it. So I think a short row hat will be really nice. But we know you're really sticking around to the end for the giveaway. We always have a giveaway every month, and this month is no exception. So we are going to be giving away 2 skeins of sock yarn. This is static sock yarn from Knit Picks. This is a self-patterning yarn. Sort of striping, but it has a pattern in there as well. So this is Strawberry Land, and this one's called the Max. I used this one for the last sock tutorial, and it's sort of reminds me of an Easter egg. Like the way it knits up, it looks like some sort of Easterish type of pattern. And then this other one, which has some pinks and reds and like a gray in there and some white. So I'm not sure how that one patterns up, but these are 2 skeins, so enough for 2 pairs of socks should be. There are 437 yards in each skein, so 200-gram skeins of self-patterning sock yarn. And along with the 2 skeins of yarn, we've got some stitch markers from Alley Cat Yarns. Just some little bulb markers and another little charm, a little cat charm there. And of course, a nerdy knitting pin, because you need to have a little pin, or I just like them and I had to buy a bunch, so now I have to give them all to you. So you get a pin. And one more thing, a sock knitting book from Knit Picks. This is their Rockin' Socks, Colorful Patterns by Knit Picks. I'm not sure how many patterns there are in here, but it's a nice, good-sized book full of sock patterns. So you get 2 skeins of sock yarn along with a book full of sock patterns, and they're very cute. I like the ones with the pom-poms on the back. So that is our giveaway for this month. Now, to enter the giveaway, you have to leave a comment telling me you want to enter. So let's think. Our question this month, let's see. I hadn't thought about this ahead of time. Have you used Knit Picks yarn for knitting socks? And if so, do you have a favorite sock yarn? They've got quite a few different sock yarns. I really like their Hawthorne fingering for socks. Comes in lots of great colors. And it's on the sturdier side, so I really like that one. They also have Stroll, which is pretty soft and not my favorite for knitting socks. I like it for other things. But let me know in the comments if you've used a Knit Picks yarn for knitting socks, yes or no. And if you have, which ones you like for knitting socks. So leave a comment telling me about the sock yarns from Knit Picks, if you use them or not. And then Wednesday, June 5th, I think, the Wednesday following the release of this video, is when I will use a random comment generator to choose one of those comments, and then I will respond to your comment telling you to get in touch with me, sending me an email with your full name and mailing address so I can mail you your package. And you have 48 hours to get back to me. If you don't get back to me within 48 hours, I will choose another winner, because otherwise we'd just be waiting forever trying to contact people. So make sure your notifications are turned on so you'll know that you've had a response to your email. So the giveaway is open worldwide. I do have a caveat that if the shipping is super expensive to your location, I will be giving you a $50 Wool Warehouse gift card instead. They ship all over the place, so you can just use the gift card instead of me having to pay shipping. I haven't had that, that hasn't been an issue yet, but if there ever is like a shipping amount that's absolutely crazy, then that is the alternative. And also, I'm not responsible for any customs or duty or taxes. I'm in Canada, and if I have to ship this to another country, then often there are customs and duties and taxes that might have to be paid. Generally, there is not, because in most places, if it's under a certain amount, and these giveaways are usually around the $50 range, then it should be absolutely fine. But I have to say that here, that I'm not responsible. If for some reason you do have to pay customs or duties, then you are responsible for paying for those. And the final fine print, this giveaway is not sponsored by YouTube in any way. I'm sponsoring this giveaway. This is yarn I've received from Knit Picks and other small things that I've had here or purchased myself. So I'm the sponsor this month. So if you'd like to enter that giveaway, be sure to leave a comment down below. And that wraps up another episode of our monthly knitting roundup. And if you're new here and you want to catch up on past episodes, I'll put a playlist for this season and you can watch those videos there. And if you've already watched and you're caught up with the podcast episodes, I'll have YouTube recommend a video and I'll put that right here. And I'll see you in the next video.